Okay, so let's get started with the demo. So you're going to want to check out this TypeScript journey project. I suggest if you're following along, you check out the Start Here branch. And I have that here. So let's go over the README. You're going to want to yarn install, yarn build, and then yarn build, and yarn dev. And that's going to build all the packages and then run them locally. And one thing that you'll know if it's working is if you go to localhost 4000, you should see this hello from TSJ TypeScript journey running locally. So yeah, what's here? So as I said, this is a mono-repository. So there are lots of packages that can be positioned next to each other and then can be deployed together or separately. So not to be confused for a monolith, which is where all your code is in one place and you have to deploy it all in one. Here we have like a bunch of apps and packages which can be deployed together and can be deployed independently. Yeah, let's have a look at what we have in terms of apps, packages, what that means. So Turborepo, which is a tool for managing mono-repositories, has this concept of apps, packages, and utilities. So the idea is with an app that's going to be something which is actually deployed. A package can be used by an app and doesn't necessarily need to be deployed. So it can be used for like common like testing libraries, that kind of stuff as well. And then this is a concept which I found useful, which is to have utils as well. So this is not like officially recommended by Turborepo. They just mention apps and packages. Utils I use for like things that are local and will never be deployed. For example, like I have this thing called local Lambda server. It could be like to spin up a local like Docker container for Mongo or something, right? So yeah, so what do we have in terms of apps? So not all these are created yet. Some of them we're going to create along the way. But we have the Lambda API, which is a simple Nest.js application. We have the SST app, which is for SST deployment. So I'll get into that later. We have the CDK app. So these things are both for infrastructure as code. So this is for using TypeScript to deploy applications. And then we're going to create a Vite app. Vite is a React application. And then Next is also React, but server-side rendered as well. And then inside packages, we have the common code shared between packages. So if you see in common, for example, we have this common config package name. So you can see that this package name is just saying TSJ, and that's actually going to be imported into the existing API. So here, for example, right? And you can see that we have this message that we see right now. We have like hello from TSJ. So hello from common config. It's imported here. There we go. So going back to the README, we have this common package for things which are shared between other packages or apps. And then we also have Eslint custom config. So this is an advantage of using a monorepo, is that you can have so for Eslint, by the way, if you are not sure what Eslint is, it's like, if I try and do this, Eslint will tell me like, hey, that's not a very good name for a variable, right? So it's about writing clean code. So the nice thing about using a monorepo is you can have all this kind of config for your lint setup, for your TS config, all in one place, and then you can import it. So what it means is that if I look at my Eslint for the Lambda API, it's saying extends custom, right? So I can extend from the custom place and then overwrite it. Similar thing for TS config. So if I go to my tsconfig for my CDK app, you can see that it extends from a base configuration, which is a package down here. So yeah, that's kind of an introduction to monorepos in general, and how it's working with Turborepo. Then, yeah, if you're interested in how Turborepo specifically is working, then I suggest like you can look at the docs for that. But basically, as I mentioned already, Turborepo is something which is going to help you manage all your packages together. And you can, so the main thing about that is executing scripts. So like if we have this dev script here, then I'm saying turbo run dev, that means like run the dev script in every package, right? So you can see that in the package for Lambda API, dev means running nest, start, watch, right? We also have a build script here, which is going to do build. So when I run turbo run build, it's going to run build everywhere to build the application. So yeah, Turbo has a lot of features, but for now we're just scratching the surface with that, which essentially at the moment just using it to run scripts and also like nicely show the output for those scripts in here. Because what that means as well is like if I, for example, go into my common, let me go into my app, right? And let me deliberately do something I'm not allowed to do. So reference object which doesn't exist. You can see that I see a TypeScript error immediately here, right? And I think probably the app is gonna, okay, yeah, so it says hello from undefined now, but you can see that the TypeScript error comes out in the console because what Turborepo is doing is watching all of the packages as they're being built locally and then also reporting errors to this console log. So I could have errors coming from other packages that will also come into this console log as well. So yeah, what else to mention? Yeah, so starting from the README, Turborepo, CDK, SST. So for the CDK, CDK is just another app, right? And which is deploying, actually responsible for your deployment. So we can see here, like this is going to import from, yeah. So the CDK code is possible to like reference packages that exist in your monorepo and then explain how they can be deployed to AWS. And it's the same thing for SST as well. So if I look at my SST app here, and I go to my API stack, so this is the one which is actually being deployed. So I am saying, I want you to create a Lambda function, and the handler is going to be referenced here, and then it's going to use Docker to build it, and then create an API gateway. So all of this means that when I actually deploy this to Amazon, obviously it's not going to be running on localhost anymore. It'll be now be a deployed API. So yeah, so that's very quick. We'll go much more detail into SST and CDK later. But a nice thing to mention when you're using Yarn, when you're using a monorepo, and by the way, the package manager here is Yarn. So Yarn is similar to NPM. But using Yarn-Berry, or anything, I think, greater than the Yarn version 2, you have these very nice plugins for working with monorepos as well. Well, actually with any repository, but they especially are very nice when using with monorepos. So what I mean is you can do, for example, here, Yarn upgrade interactive. And what this is going to do is going to show me every package in the monorepo, what version it's on. So what it means is that I can come through here and I can, for example, like say, okay, I'm going to update Nest, and I'm going to update it across the whole application, right? And this is great because, like, if you imagine if you worked in a company where you have all of your like front end, back end, whatever stuff in many different repositories, it might be difficult to see like, okay, what version of Nest as a company are we using, and how can we upgrade it across all of our repositories. So of course there are tools and stuff for doing that too, but having it in one monorepo is also nice, and especially having these plugins. There's another plugin which I really like for Yarn, which is the TypeScript plugin, which I have here as well. So you can look up documentation on this, how you add plugins and stuff, but it basically means whenever I install any kind of TypeScript package, it's going to automatically install the types for that package as well as a dev dependency. So yeah. And then as for how exactly, yeah, I'll come back to bundling and all that kind of stuff later. So I mentioned actually that this is happening inside a Docker build, is how we're actually deploying the API, right? But let's go back to shipping, bundling, all that kind of stuff later. So yeah, now the final thing you can do is, after you've kind of had a look around, you can familiarize yourself with this repository a bit. We can actually deploy it already. So we can run yarn deploy. In order for that to work, you're going to need to have AWS CLI set up on your machine, which means you should be able to do something like STS, get caller identity. If you can run that command and you see that you have some kind of profile set up for AWS CLI, then it should be fine. So let's have a look quickly, like what's going to happen when I do deploy. It's going to do turbo run deploy, and then it's going to use the SST app to deploy. So if I do yarn deploy, then it's actually going to, and obviously you need to have built already for that to work. Okay, so I think it's not going to work because it says you need to have Docker running. So you should have Docker too. So yeah, as I said, I'm choosing to build this API using Docker, but it's not the only way of doing it. And there are other things you could do. You can bundle, and yeah, we'll get into that later on. So Docker is running. So it's going to now build the API. Sorry, it's going to use Docker to make sure that all of the assets needs to be deployed are in one place. And then it's going to use SST to actually deploy. Okay, so this is actually successfully deployed now. And if I click on this URL and open this up, then we should see hello from TSJ. So that's now my deployed AWS stack. And I can also go into CloudFormation and show you. So here we go. This is the stack. And here again, we have the API output. Okay, so that's a short introduction to the monorepo that we'll be working with for the rest of this demo.